1 year ago, I set out to find the truth. Will training your back every single day lead to extreme results? The answer is yes, but not for the reason you might expect. I did build a respectable amount of muscle, there's no denying that, but I found daily back training so invaluable for its connection to something much more exciting. It makes you ready for anything. This is an ideal many of us have been reaching for all our lives. Existing deep within what can only be described as our inherent primal nature to survive is a longing for the knowledge that no matter what comes our way, we're gonna make it. Of course, we could never fully rest easy here, as nothing is ever set in stone and we'll all die one day, but many of the concerns we might have once had have, for the most part, been laid to rest in our modern age. Modern medicine and an abundance of food being prime examples. We're able to ease the burden of survival by relying on others. Doctors will take care of me if I get sick. Or if I run out of money and can't buy enough food, the government will give it to me for free. Even if we don't act on these things, knowing they're there gives us a feeling of relief. At a certain point though, we all know the burden does still, at the end of the day, rest entirely with us as individuals. Even if you had a fortune large enough to have a team of, say, 50 or so people devoted at all times to your every need and desire, it's still up to you to communicate said needs, as no one can read your mind, and even if they could, it'd still be up to you to think, and so on. Nowhere is the truth that you are responsible for your own survival more readily apparent than with physical ability. How many different life or death scenarios would you survive? If your life depended on running away at max speed for 5 minutes, would you make it? What if you needed to scale a 10-foot wall? Could you do it? If a loved one was trapped after a cave-in, would you have the strength to move the rubble? The list goes on. This brings forth the question, could you train to be prepared for any situation? Many have tried to answer this question, and in a way it's the basis for an entire subculture of fitness known as functional training. The main problem here is that to truly excel in any situation that requires a highly specialized skill, you must spend many years working to become highly specialized, and what works in one example may not work for another, and so on. There's simply not enough time to become a master of all. The question then becomes, could you train in such a way as to be prepared for, if not every scenario, at least most of them? This is a much more realistic question, and brings us back to training your back every day. I sincerely believe this is the way for one simple reason. Back training is restorative and life-giving. Before moving on, I should clarify. When I set out to train my back every day, when I said back, I meant the part of the body from the neck down to the hips. But what I've realized is it's almost impossible to completely separate what I defined as the back from the entirety of the posterior chain. Sure, you could spend all of your time doing completely isolated movements, but to me at least, an optimized program involves a lot of full body movements, which means if you're training the back of your torso, the back of your legs, meaning your glutes and hamstrings mainly, are usually involved in some way as well, if only to help keep you stable. So from here on out, when I say back, you can assume I mean the entire backside of the body, or the posterior chain. So what makes back training so special? Well, you can think of your back as your foundation. Just as a house will only ever remain upright if it has a solid base to rest on, and the best sports car will only ever hit 120 if it's rolling on a good set of tires. If you wish to reach peak performance, you must set yourself up to come from a place of sound structural integrity. This is what back training is best at. Building and strengthening the muscles on the backside of your body usually leads to the posture required for physical activity and has a tendency to improve your mobility. Developing your back muscles is also often the recommended fix for achy joints. Sore shoulders? Train your rear delts. Sore knees? Work your hamstrings. These are just general examples, but on the whole, back training seems to improve the stability of your joints. Imagine how much more ready for any situation you'd be if you had good posture and mobility and your joints were healthy. You'd be infinitely more prepared. And this is all without even mentioning strength and power. A very large majority of your strength comes from your backside. As the old saying goes, it's not the guy with a big chest and arms you need to watch out for, it's the guy with a massive upper back and thick legs that's a threat. With all of this in mind, it only makes sense that daily back training is the path to becoming ready for anything. Every single day, even if it's only in a small way, you'll be building on that foundation and setting yourself up for future success. You can, of course, choose to specialize and develop specific skill sets at the same time as well, but the back training will be your base and will have the most general carryover to the widest range of possible scenarios. Before I end this video, I'd like to share with you my own example of a potential life or death situation I was faced with a few weeks ago, which led to me realizing the true power of daily back training. For part of my job, I do in-house consultation visits with rescue dogs who are often afraid and/or aggressive towards people. This usually goes better than you might expect, as I am highly trained for this, but sometimes there's nothing you can do. Well, I pulled up to a house to meet a 90-pound rescue dog, and I won't name the breed, but let's just say he was 90 pounds of muscle, and the owner was waiting out front. The front yard was surrounded by an 8-foot-tall, double-layered wooden fence and was roughly 50 feet across. I made my way through the gate, along the sidewalk, and up the 15 or so steps onto the porch. The porch was maybe 10 feet up. It actually looked pretty cool, and I introduced myself. The owner was very nervous, which I suspect played a very large role in how things played out, but I went ahead as usual. I stood back and she let her dog out of the front door. Straight away, the dog started nipping at my legs, but also seemed to be distracted while he inspected the area around his mom. I knew I needed to separate myself from the dog, but I wasn't 100% sure at this point that he wouldn't accept me given time, so I backed off a bit and let him do his thing. From here, things got worse. Deciding there were no other threats, the dog focused all of his attention on me, and he wanted me gone. He started biting hard. If he wanted, he could easily have latched on, and I'd be powerless to get him to let go. I knew I had seconds to get out of there. Using the stairs and the front gate wasn't an option. That would take too long. So in a moment, I found my route, made sure it was clear of possible hazards, made the decision, and went for it. I hopped the porch railing, dropped the 10 or so feet to the ground, sprinted as fast as I could to the nearest section of fence, pulled myself up and over it, and I was free. The escape happened in maybe 5 seconds. Any longer and I would have been caught. So how does this tie into daily back training? Well, I haven't dropped 10 feet or sprinted that fast or hopped a fence in years, but my body was able to do it because I was prepared. I believe the daily back training set me up with such a solid foundation that when the time came to act, I was ready and my body was capable. Sure, you could say it was all adrenaline and anyone could react when the time came, and perhaps you're right, but to walk away unscathed after the fact, that's the trick. Now, of course, I should never have allowed myself to get trapped on the porch, and the owner should have used a leash, but no one's perfect all the time, and we both learned a valuable lesson that day. And that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. To all of you who have been here over this last year, thank you. Your support has been incredible, and I hope this video gave you something to think about. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you around.